Good morning, everyone. Let me introduce you to Desmond Shum. We're very happy to have you here. Desmond had great success doing business, developing things in China in the boom years. He had a network spanning the highest levels of power in China, and that is an important factor of the success you were able to have. You're currently not living in China. We're not going to go into the story there. He published his great memoir, Red Roulette, about 4 years ago, right? So if you want to know more, and it's a fascinating read, I'd recommend that. But Desmond, I want to talk to you about China in 2025. You still have a wide network. You follow things very closely, of course. And about 2 weeks ago, you wrote on social media. You said, let me see. You said, I don't want to sound negative about China all the time. You add, it's not productive to do that. So let's kick off with some positivity then. If you don't want to be negative, what are some positive things you're seeing happening in China right now that you would say, well, those are productive ways or themes to talk about in terms of what's going on in China?
I think, but before that, it's like, the reason I wrote what I wrote is because there's so much for me. I mean, I think from my perspective, my experience, my of doing business for 20 years, 25 years, quarter century in China, is like so much things come out of China. For my read, it's very negative, and then I wrote quite a bit about it. And then but then I'm so get tired of it. I'm just like, what the heck is positive these days about China? I think you posed that question yesterday, and I thought about it. And I think one thing I really think it's a tremendous success of China, and over the last few decades actually, is the ability to go from, especially the industry side, grow from zero, not 0 to 1, but 1 to 2. Like we don't invent things. We are tremendous on innovation, on people's invention, and populate it, industrialize it, and also massively produce it. And that's something China is tremendous. And that's what, what brings China to what it is today.
You mentioned the economic model that has brought the country much success over the past 4 decades. China is now going all in on high quality development, as they call it. They've been doing it for a while now, but now in the upcoming 5-year plan, the 15th since 1953, it's all in. But you've also said previously that China's economic model has kind of run its course, and structural reform is needed. Do you see structural reform as a realistic option? What would the reforms be that you think are needed to help China grow to the next level?
I think, actually in recent, I would say recent months, and especially last 2 years, one thing is within China, like people talk a lot about in social media, was where Wen Jiabao gave his departure speech, essentially, as a premier, was without political reform, we cannot safeguard the fruits of economic reform. He said that, and then that has been brought up a lot in the last several months, especially now with the new 5-year plan on it. The issue I have I lived through it, is the economic model we had going since 2000, year 2000 when China joined the WTO, is this heavy investment, infrastructure, real estate, and then export. And that's where brought us to where we are. But I think overall, if you look at it, it's like every avenue of that is basically getting closed. I think investment, we have invested so much in infrastructure. There's a lot of talk about city, like Gold City in China. There's a lot of talk about like roads to everywhere, but to nowhere. Real estate obviously has been declined for the last 4 years now. And export market is facing real challenge now with the geopolitical situation it is. So I think that model really has run its course, and that's the biggest issue. I mean, the China face. I think the question you raise is why even the current administration, despite everything, they have retrenching politically. They also talk about structural reform, although they don't mean political reform. But if one thing that they have to do is distribution. They need to change the structure of distribution of income. And the reason China right now is like last year, the consumption accounts like less than 40%, it's just about 40% of the GDP, which is like about the lowest it is in the world, and it's about 15% behind Europe, like 20% behind America, and global average they're about like 10 to 15% behind. And then even in the new 5-year plan, there's a lot of talk about we need to boost consumption, we need to boost domestic market because external market is becoming challenging. But the issue is, unless you change the structure of the income distribution, it's not people have money to spend but were not willing to spend it. It's people don't have the money to spend. And the reason China is able to do, or the government is able to build all the infrastructure is because they take the lion's share of the income in the past, and that has been. And so you need to change the structure of the income distribution. But that is very hard because there's a lot of entrenched interest. There is, if you really get to try to change the income distribution, inevitably it has a lot of political implications. And that's where China is getting stuck right now.
You mentioned like we've been investing in these new cities that are maybe not they're like ghost cities, or the infrastructure in the end, you can only build so many high-speed rail lines or highways, even if you're China. And demographics has been coming up yesterday to this morning as well, more than I expected. And there's this stat that by 2030, China is expected to lose a New York City every year in its population numbers. So that's 8-9 million people a year. What is the impact beside maybe economic, or is it only economic, on the country? That it has this graying population, but also absolute decline in numbers.
So even by official number, there are academics who said, by official number, the Chinese population started declining 3 years ago. And I think we lost 5 million people last year. And then moment, the current China's fertility replacement rate is about 1, which is on par with Korea, which is the lowest in the world. And for Korea, from 1.3 to 1, it took them 17 years. In China, it took us 3 years. So the population decline is severe. And then all estimate at the moment outside, if you look at the current trend, all estimate currently in the world are underestimating the speed of decline. But at the moment, it hasn't really factored in. I mean, Chinese, we have a growth spur like in 1960 to 1970. That's a huge growth spur, which is actually my age. As this group of people retiring, that you will see China's aging population really jump. At the moment, for China, 1.5 million people, you lost a few million, and 1.4 billion people, you lost a few million. You don't really feel it. But it is showing up in, if you look at how many thousands of primary schools are getting shut every year now, it's starting to show. And I think the pace of that change, or impact of the economic on the economy is underappreciated at the moment.
Was it 2 years ago when you testified in front of the U.S. House of Representatives? And a quote that landed out of there. I mean, I don't know if any of you has been to Macau. It's fascinating what's going on there, the gambling city of China. But you at that hearing in Washington describe the entire country of China kind of like as a casino. And if you're a foreign company with investments in it and being active in there, it's time to run for the door, take your winnings and get out. Is that still how you feel? Is that what made you say that, and how do you see that 2 years on?
Let me clarify. I'm not saying that it's it's a house on fire. You need to run for the door now. That's not what I meant. It's after I start my career in the beginning of 1990s, and I started a career in private equity, which is the beginning of the industry in China, and then a long history. Over a couple of decades, my experience, my conclusion is the way to play the China market is this. You put, $2 on the table, the go-go years, you get to 20, or you get to 50, whatever. And then you basically, you take the chips off. You take $40 off, and you put the 10 back. And then you ride that 10. And then maybe that 10 get you to 100. Then you take the 100 off, you put another 30 in. That's the way to play the China market. That's the way, and it's almost like gamblers, right? That's the way to play the China market. The ones who $2 in, get to 20, 20 on, yeah, you get a 60, okay? Then, boom, gone. The entire 60 gone. And that happens repeatedly through my business, through my my experience looking at the business cycle, and that's what when people play the China market, I would say that's the way to play it, because that is a high risk. It has been for decades. It has been a high risk, high reward economy, but the risk is tremendous. People are underappreciating it.
I don't think I've ever gone beyond low stakes blackjack, so maybe we should discuss a bit strategy on that for future wins maybe. But I want to kind of ask you about, last week or 2 weeks ago we had the fourth plenum where the outlines for the 15th five-year plan for the PRC were introduced. The actual plan will be voted on at the two sessions in March, the National People's Congress. And those 5-year plans, they really give the impression that we're dealing with a country, a government, a leadership that thinks far ahead, has strategies, knows where it's going to go, knows where it needs to go, and what needs to happen to achieve those goals. But you kind of also have a lot of people saying, who think the CCP is this uniquely long-term, hyper-strategic, almost mythically capable power. You've mentioned before that your experience is quite the opposite. There are a few overriding goals, but in practice the governance is far more reactive, improvised, and crisis-driven. Can you elaborate a bit on that? Are we overestimating the long-term planning that's going on in China, or is it just stumbling from opportunity to opportunity or crisis to crisis?
I think that is a very interesting subject, and I think we can we can discuss and go on this for hours. I think that's two dichotomy here. One is on the one side of it that the party has a few goals that they are like sort of ink into their soul. They that's for sure we're gonna on everything we need to go by that. And then outside of that, everything else.
Sorry, but can you name some of those goals?
Like the party need to be in power forever. The political party belong to the Communist Party, and that's and then we need to actually, I think that they want to defeat the liberal democracy not because they think it's really out of fear. We need to defeat them because the foreign powers, because out of fear, because your existence, your prosperity, your survival is challenging my legitimacy. And for that, I need to challenge you, and I need to defeat you, I need to overcome you. And so these are themes. They're a bunch of one of the books, I truly recommend if you want to understand the party is Xu Chenggang, what's his name of the book of? Institutional Genes. Institutional. He go back to history, look at how the communism and the Communist Party of China and Russia and how this whole thing get implemented and basically came over to China and then now it's prospered in China and be the strongest it ever been in any other city, any other country it has been. So in that side of it, there are a few themes, and then they do a lot of planning on that, and they're very consistent. But other than that, a lot of things is just like improvise. The most famous thing, the quote for Deng Xiaoping is crossing the river by touching the stone. Does that sound long-term planning to you? That goes on. That has been quoted for decades by the senior leadership, right? Like, black cat, white cat, the one catch the mouse is the best cat. Does that sound, like you're crossing the river, you don't even know where the course is, you don't know where you're going, which side of the river you're going to end up, you have no idea whether you're ever able to cross the river. So does that sound like, and that's the sort of guiding principle in the last 30, 40 years. But at the same time, there are certain themes that they're very, very consistent. And from the people, a lot of people outside of China, they're not mashing the two. And then as a result, they get misconceptions, misunderstood the situation, and misinterpreted the situation.
It might be difficult to answer not being inside China, but do you have any perspective on what the mood in the country is? Economic growth has, of course, been kind of disappointing according to many predictions. Here we always talk about, the youth unemployment is so high and people have no more perspective. And what do you know, or what can you tell us about how you think the mood in the country is? People are just ambivalent by now, or are they very hopeful and think, no, we're proud of China and how China now asserts itself on the world stage and in many areas equals or exceeds what the US is capable of? What is the mood there?
I think the mood in the last, since Xi Jinping came to power, has have a few switches. I think the first 3, 4, 5 years when he first came to power, he started this anti-corruption drive, and especially the first 3 years, I think. People were very hopeful. That they're hopeful is like, one is corruption was a rampant issue and everybody see it in their, see it. And then, so people were clapping for it. And there was a hope that giving Xi Jinping's father was the provincial head of Guangdong, the first province of China that opens up, that he will drive economic reform, possibly drive political reform. That's always obviously was dashed by 2015. And then I think it was a mode of very tense, like where is he going? Where is bringing us? And obviously, he tell the whole damn world when he say, well, I'm going to president for life and change the constitution for it, right? By 2019. And I think by now, in the last, especially I think COVID really changed the mood of the country. The people really, for the first time, it's like in your face. I would do whatever it takes, and even you need to, you may have been shut in your apartment and be on a hunger drive to death. That's what I'm going to do to you. I think that really changed. I think more COVID had a tremendous. And then since then, as COVID, that China has never had a rebound in the economy. Just give you some statistics like. That's 9 million people, about 10 million people doing delivery work job in China. So they are not counted as unemployment. There are about 30 million people being Uber driver, the Chinese version of Uber driver in China, and they are not counted as. So economy is a real struggle. I don't see them. getting out of this situation. by local consumption coming back. Really the way out for China, and they have been betting on it over the last few years, is export. That's the real exit for. And then in that sense, I think I see our time is running. I just have a few words on related to Europe. I mean, by all means, I mean Americans, as much as they can, they're trying to shut the Chinese off from their market in every sense they can. And the rush really for the Chinese are, we need to upgrade as fast as we can in technology to be independent, not under threat from the Americans, and then rush to the European market or in the export. You just look at last 12 months export growth of the Chinese to the European market. I'm no longer living in China. I say whatever I want. If you don't arm up to defend your industry will be decimated within the next 5 years. And that's the last thing I have to say.
So we ended with something, well, not too positive after all. Thank you very much. And by the way, you mentioned the millions of parcel delivery people working in China now. Just, I think this week or last week, a memoir was published in English. It was a bestseller in China already for a few years. It's called I Deliver Parcels in Beijing. Oh. I've just started it. It's a fascinating read by somebody who actually did this for 5 years. And just from the inside out, how that process works and what the position of these people are in their jobs and how they view their future. Thank you very much, Desmond, for now.